And in terms of dealing with an incompetent, I think we saw a pretty incompetent CFO with errors, in the financials themselves. A CAE who, at the last meeting where the financials have been discussed, did not bring the final report of the year. The CRO was pretty quiet. How do you deal with with incompetent executive team as the chair of the audit committee?
I think this is a very important question. As the chairperson of the audit committee, you need to make sure that people are accountable and not go through a process where you're just using an agenda to get through a meeting. Hence, if you look at the theme of the audit committee is to ensure that the chairperson of the audit committee works outside of that committee as well. So from where we sit now, the risk that you face in terms of your fiduciary duty is to ensure that you've got a strong CFO, a strong CE, and a strong CIO that's supporting you to fulfill your fiduciary duty in terms of the approval processes that you just mentioned. As a result, you will see it's important to make sure that your evaluation is honest and it takes into account your fiduciary role to make sure that the person that you are holding responsible for that function and to fulfill your own responsibilities through a delegation is the right person.
Just to add on that, perhaps yesterday one of the panel members did mention perhaps what we ought to be aware of as audit committee members is the actual risks that you're taking. So the risks that you're personally taking now has got to then transfer, I guess, to the people that are supporting you in order for you to be recommending things like financial statements and integrated reports. So that reflection of, I've taken a risk, can I trust the line of, my line of defense, which is mainly management, I think is a key question.
So if I can just add on further, I think what we also try to highlight is that audit committee members must take the fact that knowledge of the business is a critical part of their performing their duties. Hence, having an incompetent CFO or a CE, you shouldn't be depending on them only. You should be also understanding the business. And what we try to portray in this simulation is that audit committee members understand the intricacies of the business so they can question the CFO appropriately.
Just to follow up and to link with the panel that we had yesterday, this question is to you, the CFO, with the CFOs yesterday. And I think one of the key things that they highlighted was the fact that as the CFO, you must almost be an army general, but get your hands dirty. Do you believe, how would you have advised this particular CFO, to end up in a situation where they're taking numbers that are incorrect to an audit committee? How in your experience, would you have advised them to have dealt with this better?
I think it's always challenging when you have either IT systems or you have backup staff assisting you in preparing those financials. I think what happens then is that as a CFO, you could be extra diligent in terms of what you do. We actually mentioned that earlier. I was saying I have been personally through an experience where I haven't had a finance manager in my role as a CFO privately through a year end, and it becomes very difficult when you actually yourself almost getting involved in doing almost from a trial balance to a consolidation to the annual report to the integrated report. It's difficult to check your own work. And I think it's very important that yes, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to try and rally as many people you can around to assist, and where possible is to either involve another executive to oversee and check some of that information for you, particularly around the accuracy of some of the data. It's very difficult. I think everyone knows that if you do your own work, it's very difficult sometimes to pick up your own errors. But definitely from that point of view, you then have to measure your time very carefully. I know from experience, you'll end up working Saturdays, Sundays, you've got to be careful when you get tired, you make more mistakes. So it's always a good idea to try and find a third party. Even in my case, it's using your third party external auditors to maybe even assist and say, look, as an additional oversight, can you just please assist with going through this with me to make sure that I don't make those mistakes.
Just in terms of the audit committee report itself, the CE was asked to make a comment in terms of if they were involved in reviewing the actual report. As the chairperson, can you really take their word for it, considering that they couldn't even table their own report? How do you deal with a situation like that?
I think in the real world, what would happen is you'd probably get a specific, either positive or negative assurance from the CAE telling you that the internal financial controls are working based on what the work that they've done, or positive assurance to say that the internal financial controls are working. And in that scenario, we would have then depended on the combined assurance matrix with the CAE, the external auditors, and any other assurance provider to give us their opinion on the actual audit committee response.
I think just to add on to the test, just to give a contrast of issues that were being dealt with in terms of how bad some of the submissions were. I think the CFO took the approach to say, I must meet my deadline. He submitted something that was not of the right quality, whereas the CAE took his time and said, let me rather get the right quality and submit something. So it's a toss-up, and I think as the chairperson mentioned, sometimes it's very critical to ensure that the meetings actually result in progress being made. So rather than submitting for the sake of submitting, I think audit committees should encourage there being some level of communication so that they understand what's coming back. And I don't think any audit committee chair should accept low quality work being submitted just to meet the deadline.
External audit. We've seen quite a lot of SOCs, using shareholders' loans, guarantees as a means of ensuring that their financials are signed off and the auditors are happy from a going concern point of view. But are they really confirming the solvency of an entity?
Perhaps maybe I can just go back to that, say when we look at going concern, what is the requirement? Well, in terms of the international financial reporting standards, which the SOCs will be complying with, you are required to basically state that the financial statements are going concern, and the financial directors, actually the board overall would sign off on those financial statements as they are going, as a going concern. So the auditor has an obligation in terms of, I think it's as in 570, has an obligation to then review basically the statement that's been made by the board, which will be supplemented by some kind of information such as the cash flows, etc. So with those cash flows being submitted to an external auditor, then we would then interrogate those to say, is the cash flows that have been submitted to us, do they reflect the company as a going concern? And those cash flows then would indicate whether there would be some kind of support that's required from a government in the shareholder. And if there is such support then that's required, you obviously cannot be signing a clean audit opinion if that support is not there, because it's part and parcel of the cash flow statements. So in terms of resolving the solvency issue, it doesn't necessarily solve your solvency issue. However, one has got to bear in mind there's also solvency in terms of Companies Act as defined, and that Companies Act solvency issue is also then actually defined differently, which would be taking contingent assets and liabilities into account, which often then are not necessarily seen in terms of the financial reporting standards.
If I can just add on, as the auditor, you also look at it in terms of Companies Act, like Dr. mentioned. So something that you look at is, can you pay your debts as and when they become due? And I think that's a critical part where the shareholder guarantee comes in to make sure that the auditor is comfortable that that can actually take place.
Okay, thanks. The last two questions are really around the functioning of the committee itself and effectiveness of the meeting. The first one is to just get advice as a chair of an audit committee. Can you really force the CEO to attend the meeting?
I think you can, especially in terms of the agenda that's being presented. We'd want the CEO, together with the CFO, to take responsibility for what's on the agenda. It is best practice, and I've seen in audit committees where we've attended, the CEO does attend most of those audit committees, and it shows responsibility and decision making that we take much faster if the CEO does attend. So as a chair, you can, in my view, request the CEO does attend meetings.
Can I pose this question to one of the other members of the audit committee? In terms of, the cordial functioning from a human nature of a meeting, is the seating important?
This side of the table's under fire. That side is okay.
In my opinion, I don't think the seating is important. I think the important thing for an audit committee member is to make sure that there's effective challenge throughout the process. And understanding the business and knowing what's going on and being inquisitive is important. I didn't attack the CFO because I don't like him, and I didn't attack the external auditor because I don't like her, but I think it's just important that we need to demonstrate that as audit committee members, we've got a responsibility, and at the end of the day, we shouldn't be forced into making decisions that we're not comfortable with. So effectively, if they wanted to force me to approve the financial statement, it would have never happened. But the point is, effective challenge, that's the theme coming out for me. Make sure that you understand the business, make sure that you can ask the right questions at the right time.
The last question is around disclosure of interest. We often see that confirmation or recording of the disclosure of interest is done before confirmation of the agenda. Is that the correct way to do it, or should it be done after?
The declaration of interest should be based on the agenda. And in my view, there's actually two types. One is specific to the agenda itself, and the other is to the entity at large. So if there's something on the agenda that you as a member feel is that you're conflicted, you should be specifically rating that. Hence, declaration should come with the adoption of the agenda. The other interest is that we normally send out the register is to make sure that you don't have a conflict of interest overall with the entity. Example, procuring to an entity on services whilst you're still an audit committee member, or a relationship with a major supplier whilst you're still an audit committee member.
Thank you to all your questions this morning. Another round of applause for Mitesh and the team.
Thank you.
All right, I told you with Mitesh, fire the CFO and get your meeting over and done with. So, shall we ask the Nkonki people to stay behind Tebe as a token of appreciation? Otherwise, everybody, thank you very much. We're very exciting. Yeah, we can't give ourselves gifts. Come on. No, no. I mean, no. You, no, Nkonki people, please. What do you say we do the rating very quickly while we still have? Remember, I don't want to say too much and then I confuse you. Not that I could. On a scale of 1 to 10, please. Daniel, are we bringing up? You remember you have about 15 seconds. You may change your mind about firing or not firing the CFO, and you can rate it at 10. Or whatever it is between starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Do you want to continue with the conference? We could find something, I can tell you. We could find something, a simulation right now, and simulate your evaluation also and see how we treat people who don't. Yes, that's where I'm going. So we would have done the instantaneous evaluation, but there are also forms that are going around. So please do complete those and then make sure that the number 5 next year will be better than this one. It only gets better because you give feedback. You are coming next year, are you? We had a deal. We asked you how many were here for the first time, and we realized a lot of you are here for the second time. So please, next year when we say who's here for the first time, we wouldn't want too many hands going up, except for those you will bring from your neighborhood. Shall we ask the chairman of Nkonki Incorporated to come and say the last word. He's been here very quiet. I don't know how he manages to be so quiet for so long. But I guess if we all wanted to talk, it would be a clash of egos. So Nkonki is the chairman of Nkonki Incorporated. Please give him a very warm round of applause, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our conference, 2.5 days of information, and I'm sure we've all gained from it. Can we give ourselves a round of applause for speaking for all 2.5 days? Well, this is a very important thing to actually attend, that is this conference, and I'm sure you realize that that's why you are here. But now if you ask yourself really about these audit committees, at the end, what is the deliverable? What do we have to put on the table, as an audit committee? Well, of course, we've got a report that will be attached to the financial statements themselves. You as the audit committee that are going to table there, that shows the governance of the company. It will be reporting maybe on the internal audit and how effective it has been, about the internal controls themselves. It will report about also the finance capacity, the capacity within the finance department and so forth. So those are the reports, a report that will give at the end that will be attached to the financial statements itself. And of course, we'll be giving an input, to the director's report, because the director's report at the end, the directors there are relying on you now, because you are a subcommittee to them, to say that, okay, I'm happy with these financial statements. They fairly present the state of affairs in this company and so forth. So they will have to attach that report there. And even about the going concern, the directors will comment on that. Primarily, they report on you as their colleagues, because they have tasked you to actually look in detail on this. Of course, they've done their own their review, but you have looked at it in detail. So this is the end result. And you can see it's very crucial, because the users of the financial statements out there would look at this, rely on this, and then take important decisions based on the reports that are there in the set of financial statements. Now, the crux of the matter is that then how do you do this? Well, because obviously you are not members of the company that are going to sit there 365 days to actually see what's going on. Yeah, the crux of the matter is that you yourself are placing now reliance on, as it has been discussed here, the management itself, management controls and so forth that are in there, the internal audit, risk management processes, and even external assurance providers, like external audits and other specialists and so forth. So now this is why it is important now that you need to interrogate, all the reports that are being provided to you. You need to actually ask all those questions, those assessing questions to find out, to make sure that you get to the truth and understand really what is going on there. So really what we have seen here, these role plays that was here, and also the discussions that were made, they are helping us to make sure that we ask the right questions. Now, if you go back to the first day, for example, we were even told about the industry trends, some of the things that are happening that are very bad, the kind of fraud that is happening there. What do you do? That should help you now to want to ask more questions. That should help you to equip yourself that, okay, look, I'm not actually making a blind reliance on what I'm given here, because as you have heard there, people that are committing fraud now are no longer the junior staff. It goes up to the senior management. So the very people that you are relying on, maybe the very people that are trying to pull a wool over your eyes. So you need to be careful and make sure that you interrogate those reports. And then one speaker was even saying that you need to even do a lifestyle audit, of the management and so forth, to make sure that really people are not concealing things from you, so that you don't give something that says that, okay, everything is okay, and the directors as a result say, okay, everything is okay, whereas the person that you relied on was actually pulling wool over your own eyes. So it is really very important that we get updated with the way that other people are actually doing things, so that we make sure that we check ourselves up and make sure that we don't get a situation where, we're being lied to. Now, so really, I'd like to say thank you to the speakers here, to the team, to the role players, to actually bring these things up so that they equip us to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we are being misled. Now, some of the things that were specifically mentioned, which I'd like to sort of just go through briefly, is that really the kind of information that we interrogate, for example. Now, as you have heard, it's not just limited to financial information. The strategy of the organization that makes sure that, the figures here make sense, because you understand what this company is all about. You understand what their plans were and so forth. So you need to interrogate all that information. Now, looking at the capacity, of the finance department itself, you heard people talking about even creating sections where they've got business analysts within the finance. It's not a question of bean counters that are sitting there doing bookkeeping work, and so forth. So they do that. They actually analyze the figures, make sure they make sense so that proper decisions could be taken, by the entity there. So those things are really important. Now, talking about this capacity, just a little experience that I have when I was auditing, this goes back a few years back, I went to this small municipality, and I was auditing on behalf of the Auditor General. I walk in, very small place, this hall has just a counter there, and somebody in the counter with a receipt book in front of her. And then I told them that I'm from the auditors. I'd like to meet with the town clerk. Those days they were called town clerks and town treasurers. And now this elderly man comes out of the small office. Yes, I'm the town clerk. And I asked for the town treasurer. And she points to this lady who I thought was a cashier, that there is the town treasurer. And I thought, okay. It was sort of saying, it's just that I was diplomatic. It was sort of me saying, man, but this is a cashier. How can you call a town treasurer? So from there you can tell right away that, look, what sort of information am I going to get from these people? Because you can tell that, this is just a simple cashier, but she is considered to be a treasurer. So, that's a simplified example. But really, even in big companies and big municipalities and so forth, you can have a situation where really the capacity within the finance department is not good enough, meaning that the information that you can expect to get there won't be good enough. So those are flags that you need to take into account as you are looking at these things. Also, I was actually quite impressed with these role plays because they were reflecting what is actually happening in there, where key officials do not attend meetings, So really you could see here that the chairperson was not impressed in this last one. And talking about that, also one audit that I was in with Mr. Nwala there, he was the provincial auditor there at the end of the Eastern Cape. We go to this municipality, we have made all the arrangements that, okay, we are going to meet the people, including the municipal manager. We drive 200 kilometers to get to this place. When we were there, we were told that, no, the municipal manager is not available, and he is on sick leave. Mr. Nwala would not take that. He said, no, he must come back. But he's on sick leave. They said, call him, he must come. And he came. He was not so impressed by this, but he came. I can tell you the first 5 minutes of that meeting, it was explosive. But, the mission was achieved because now he realized the seriousness of this. So really, as audit committee members, audit committee chairpersons, you must not take nonsense, People must take this meeting seriously. It must not be something that is just for the CFO's department, They are involved, they are responsible, they've got to answer, they must be accountable. So really, we thank you, the speakers, the role players, and so forth, for actually demonstrating this to see that when these things happen, we don't take them lying down. We need to, get people accountable, make sure that they do their part. Yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is our fourth audit committee conference that we have had here, and on all four of them I've been here. and on all 4, I always gain something new. What does that mean? That means even if you come here next year on the 5th one, there's something new that you'll gain. So that's why we are going to encourage you to please, again, bless us with your presence next year when we have our 5th annual Audit Committee Conference. We encourage you to actually do so. Now, in front of you, okay, you have been told about the evaluation forms. I'm going to repeat it maybe for emphasis that, yes, they are there. Please complete them. And those forms are helping. For example, if you notice the change from last year to this year, even the time that were starting and ending, they were informed by the comments that were coming from the audience. So we really appreciate it if really you could give an honest feedback on that so that whatever we need to improve, we do improve. Well, we have to apologize for sound that has been playing tricks a little bit. But, on the overall, at least we have managed to capture everything. We have managed to have the things sorted so that we can actually listen and hear what is being said here. So sorry about that. And this is an area of improvement that we know we are going to work on for the next one. Now, yes, we had many service providers here that have done various things. We thank them for actually being reliable and being here to make sure that things are happening smoothly. We appreciate that and would encourage them to make sure that, when we continue to work together like this, they must actually prove to be reliable, and we don't have these situations where we've got sound that is not working sometimes. But we do appreciate that efforts has been done to make sure things are working properly. To our program directors, thank you very much. You have handled this very well. Cindy is not here, and then I'm sure we are happy with the way she handled her part yesterday as well. Please don't make fun of me after this. I know you like doing that. But thank you very much for doing your part well so that we can really benefit fully from this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for traveling all this, this far to come here so that we can be here together. And the feedback from the questions that you have made, they made this thing all the more fruitful. So thank you. We hope to see you next year again.
Now, why would I make fun of the chairman? No, I wouldn't. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end, and as we said, we would deliver lunch by 1400. So thanks to everybody. I'm not going to repeat. From the first day when we spoke of the challenges facing audit committees, to the Auditor General addressing us, to the fraud and corruption story, to today the simulation of what really happens at the coalface. I'm sure you have learned a lot. You have contributed a lot with your questions. I must remind you that the questions that couldn't be answered will be compiled, well, except for the one about lack of courage. You might need some courage from elsewhere. But most of the questions of a professional nature, if we brought you both here, come on, if you can't take it beyond that, we can't help you, right? We brought you to the right venue, brought the right delegates, created a seat for you to sit next to each other. If you need help beyond that, my sons can help you, can hook you up, set up a Twitter account or something. So I wouldn't be wanting to go over that technical. I'm always fulfilled. Cindy and your team, and I know you like us to say, let's not call you by name, but we have to also acknowledge the leadership here. The sabotage word that is used in the meetings, most of the public sector meetings, you hear that word a lot, sabotage. And sometimes you, as audit committee members, can be called sabotage or saboteurs when you are asking questions, tough questions, and people don't want you to. When we argue and we don't like what the other side is saying, you call them names, we're hoping to shut them down. I really appreciate that your work is tough, and I think you are carrying through a lot of responsibility. But as I started with the words of a layman, when I open that tap in my town, when I switch on the lights, when I walk the streets and there's an open pothole, I wouldn't like to be knowing that is because somebody slipped up on a control. CPD certificates, continual professional development. This is not, what do they call it when they want to shoot down your workshop or conference? It's a talk shop. It's not a talk shop. It's part of your continuous progressive, professional development. So please collect the certificates outside. Now, just to make sure I maintain my line of thought, my best understanding of performance management is my mother. My mother didn't have grade 3 education, but she performance managed us all 9 of us, and don't say yo. She performance managed all of us, so she made sure we wrote our homework. I knew already back then that she couldn't read some of the things I was writing. But out of respect, I knew if I didn't do my homework, I would get punished at school, and she would see crosses in my book, and she will ask me why there were crosses. And if I didn't do homework, somebody would send a message that I wasn't doing my homework or I wasn't attending classes, and eventually I would get punished. It's a simple matter of, are you watchful enough? Are you vigilant enough? Are you willing to follow up on your actions? Are you willing to make sure there are consequences for non-compliance? All those things are not all within your means or your scope of competence, but it is important that we follow through because South Africa counts on you. The future of this country depends on what most of you are doing. So just to avoid me talking forever, let me leave you with the words of someone who knows about being handicapped and still achieving. A young man who was born in 1849 in England, or in England in 1949 to get my word order right, and died in 1903. In his early years, he suffered a great deal. He was an impoverished kid, and he then suffered from TB, which led to one of his legs being amputated. And as he was recovering from the amputation of the one leg, he was told, we will have to amputate your other leg as well. And even back then, around 1875, people sought medical opinion and then a second opinion. And there was a surgeon who could save his one leg. And while he was recovering, he wrote the following words, and I won't paraphrase them, but you can think about them and you see your life in this. And perhaps you will find courage to go back to the office tomorrow and do what you are supposed to do, fearlessly, consistently, and honestly. He said, out of the dark night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears, lies but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, or how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Some of the things you are asked to do are tantamount to selling your soul. Some of the times where you are asked to look the other way when things are going wrong amounts to selling your natural soul. You get threatened, I'm sure. You get manipulated. You get sabotaged. You get all kinds of undue treatment because of your professional skills and your diligence. This man says, as dark as it is, his unconquerable soul is all he had. William Ernest Henley. And he said, when I get circumstance descending upon me, I didn't cry aloud, I didn't wince, I didn't grimace. When bad luck happened, because sometimes when you're trying hard, bad luck happens. I got bloody, so I have scars to prove, but I remain upright. And when you think about the things you are afraid of, it's only horror that lies beyond that. It's not the real thing. When you switch on the lights, which is what comes on when you do your work diligently, you'll find there's nothing. And the exhaustion that comes with time, passing time, will find only those people who have character at the end of the race, still unafraid. But no matter how charged with punishment, which is what happens to people like you are still the captain of your souls. You are the masters of your fate. and the captains of your souls. And in being good masters of your fate and good captains of your souls, you become good masters of the fate of many South Africans who will never have a chance to influence their fate. Like those kids who got washed away yesterday, who are dead now because somebody forgot to supervise. Kids who got washed away and drowned because somebody forgot to do an audit of the streets and the manholes that are lying unattended. People who get poisoned when nurses in hospitals forget to practice simple hygiene because nobody was auditing simple practice of what they should be doing every day. People who can't be treated now because there's no water in Rosebank or Malvern or wherever it is because somebody forgot to audit the uninterrupted power supply. And there were audit committees in all those instances. Now, Joe Lesejane said, I'm a rehabilitated financial person, which means understand the business. It's when you understand the business that you add true value. But no matter how charged with punishment the road you're traveling on, you remain the masters of your fate and the captains of your souls. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch and travel safely. I will see you next year.